Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is Marwan Ahmed. I am the president of the American Halal Council. Today we have a great panel of speakers representing the USDA, FSIS, and some former agriculture diplomats. And I think we have a lot to learn about this halal label title of the event. Many people go to stores, purchase halal products, yet we really don't have a clear understanding of what a proper halal label should look like. Our expert speakers today will shed light on this topic and will tell us about some history about the labeling and how we got to this point and how government regulates the halal label. And I'm sure you will have some questions. If you're watching us on Facebook, please post your comments or questions in the comment section under the video. So I'm going to start our presentation today with our guest speakers from the USDA and FSIS. We have with us Lisa and Mindy, who will give a presentation and tell us about halal label from the USDA FSIS perspective. So without further ado, I will let them start their presentation and take it from here.
Okay, well, we are ready to, yep, you've got us on slide 2. Go ahead and advance to the next slide. And good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to our presentation, Recognizing Halal Meat and Poultry Products in the Marketplace. Next slide, please. My name is Lisa Kayleen Powell. I'm a veterinary medical officer with the Labeling and Program Delivery staff at the USDA Food Safety Inspection Service. And with me today, I also have my colleague, Melinda Mallon. She's also a staff officer with the Labeling and Program Delivery staff. And again, it's our pleasure to present you with today's presentation. And Mindy, how'd you like to take it from here?
Okay, hello everybody. Next slide, please. The Labeling and Program Delivery staff, referred to as LPDS, is the staff within the Office of Policy and Program Development in FSIS that deals with the day-to-day as well as the long-term big picture policy issues related to labeling. Day-to-day tasks that we perform are things like reviewing labels, answering phone calls, and answering inquiries and Ask FSIS. We also write regulations, directives, notices, and work with the FSIS inspection personnel on labeling issues. And as you can see on this slide, we perform other functions such as making amenability determinations, and we provide training, such as what we're doing today, to our internal and external stakeholders. Next slide, please. Now, the regulations specify the actual location on the label for some of the required features. Specifically, the regulations require certain features to be located on the principal display panel or the PDP, while other features may be located in either the PDP or the information panel. And there's a link at the bottom here called the checklist for mandatory features on a label that you guys can click on, and you can actually see what those required features are. Next slide, please. We're now going to talk about religious claims on labels. Religious claims are among the many claims that are permitted to appear on the labels of meat and poultry products, providing that the producing establishment can support the claims. These religious claims include halal. Next slide, please. All labels bearing religious claims must have supporting documentation from a religious authority or organization in the labeling record that is current to within the last year to support the claim. What this means to the consumer is that a religious authority makes the determination that the meat or poultry product meets religious dietary requirements. FSIS does not make this determination. The documentation is a statement or certificate asserting that the products are halal, signed and dated. This support is required to be renewed annually. Next slide. There are 4 classes of halal claims. There's generic claims, certified claims, religious exempt product, and made with halal beef or made with halal poultry. Next slide. Halal and certified halal are 2 most common types of halal labeling. Both generically approved halal claims and certified halal claims require that the process has been approved by their religious authority. Generic halal claim does not require the label to be submitted to FSIS for review. Certified halal claim requires that the label be submitted to FSIS for review. Next slide, please. We will begin with generic halal labeling. The label would clearly state halal or zabiha halal somewhere on the label. Some halal certifying organizations authorize the use of a symbol. The halal claim will be supported by documentation that is maintained at the establishment in the labeling record. This is a factual claim and can be generically approved. The establishment is not required to submit the label to USDA FSIS for review. The truthfulness of a label can be verified by the implant inspector. Next slide, please. Here is a sample label with factual statements and claims on the label, including halal. This label can be generically approved. Factual statements and claims include new, halal, and made with only white chicken. Now I will turn it over to Dr. Lisa Powell.
Okay, so we're ready for the next slide. That would be slide 12. A certified halal claim is a special claim, and it must be submitted to FSIS for review. The word certified will appear in association with the halal claim, such as certified halal or certified zabiha halal, and also identifies the certifying entity. If a symbol is applied, it must still feature the word certified and clearly identify the certifying entity. If the claim, as it appears on the label, does not include the word certified, then it is not certified halal. Here's a sample label. This is on the next slide. Here's a sample label with special statements and claims that must have prior approval from our labeling staff, including all natural, with the required disclaimer statement of minimally processed and no artificial ingredients. Another special statement is all of our chickens are raised without antibiotics. And of course, the special statement, certified halal by the Houston Halal Alliance. This label may not be generically approved. The next slide. When it comes to religious exempt products or labels, there are 4 categories of religious exempt product, and all of them are poultry. Beef and lamb goat products are not religious exempt. And this gives me an opportunity to point out that ritual slaughter and religious claims do not mean that a product is exempt from inspection for religious reasons. Only poultry product in one of the 4 categories is currently recognized as religious exempt. Next slide, please. Religious exempt poultry is exempt from certain specific provisions of the Poultry Products Inspection Act, and the exemption is necessary for the product to meet religious dietary laws. Religious exempt poultry does not receive a mark of inspection, and therefore it deviates from the general labeling requirements for poultry products. Labels for religious exempt poultry have certain labeling requirements and are required by regulation to be submitted to FSIS for review. Supporting documentation from a religious authority or organization is required to be submitted along with the label. Next slide, please. This is an example of a label for religious exempt product. Notice that it's not required to bear the same features as inspected and passed product. Nonetheless, when you see the statement that the poultry is processed under USDA exemption, along with the establishment number, you can have confidence that this product was produced in a USDA facility. I will also take this opportunity to point out that a typical religious exempt halal product will be eviscerated poultry with head on and or feet on. So it will also look different from our usual generic or certified halal product. Next slide, please. The last class is the made with halal claim. And here's examples. You might see on a label that a product is made with halal beef or made with halal chicken. The supporting documentation for halal must apply to the final product that is in the package and the establishment where it is produced. But sometimes a producer will purchase the halal meat or poultry for the product, but the final product has not been approved by a religious authority. That's what this means when you see a statement like made with halal beef or made with halal chicken on the package label. The next slide, please. This slide introduces you to Ask FSIS if you are not familiar with it. Ask FSIS is an online resource that you can use to submit any questions you have about labeling. And this resource is available to the general public. We're always happy to answer your labeling questions. So, please don't be shy about submitting a question to us. We really look forward to helping people understand the labels, and it's really one of the most enjoyable parts of our job. Next slide, please. This is the point at which we usually open up for questions after doing a brief introduction to halal labeling, but I understand that we will be waiting until after the following speaker, and then we'll take general questions from everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lisa and Mindy, for the presentation. I think this will ignite a few questions, hopefully, by the people who are following us. Before I introduce our next speaker, I'd like to take this opportunity to give a quick introduction about the American Halal Council. The American Halal Council is a non-profit organization, charitable organization registered with the government. And our work includes educating the public about halal lifestyle products and services like we're doing today. It also includes advocacy for halal with government agency, as well as doing some studies and research and presenting them to both the public and to government and businesses who can benefit from these kind of studies. Our website is americanhalalcouncil.org. Please visit it and you will learn more about the mission and vision statements of the organization. And we are here to serve this segment of our community who cares and is interested about halal products and services. Our next speaker is Mr. Mustafa Dakdoki. He is a former international marketing specialist at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, FSIS, and FAS. He has a wealth of background and knowledge and expertise in his field. And I would like to invite him to speak and give us his input on this halal labeling component. Please welcome Mr. Mustafa.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Hi, Lisa, Melinda. I'm glad that I see somebody from labeling. I used to work for labeling in 1990 to 1995. And all our, I think all our groups already gone except for Raz. Raz is still there, right, Melinda?
Yes, she is. So
Okay,
is
would
Sally
you please,
Jones.
would you please say hi to her and tell her that I said hi? This is one of my dearest friends, actually. After saying that, I just want to say that I am the one who wrote halal policy in FSIS USDA in 1991, 1992. And the reason for that is during that time, there were only, I think the only thing it was a kosher that's been certified or been approved by USDA. And we used to receive labeling, and I received, one day I received several of halal labeling, and they have this word halal on it, and the expediter doesn't know what that means. And as everybody knows, to approve a label, any claim on that label has to be correct. So I asked them, what does that mean, halal? He doesn't have no idea. And it just, the guy they're gonna buy the product, ask them to put that word on it. From there, I took initiative and I contact the Secretary of Agriculture at that time. That was Mike Espy. And there were some kind of talking about that USDA doesn't have anything to do with religion, and we cannot approve a halal label. However, some company in California received that product, which was not halal, but have halal claimed on it. And because of halal claim, that means USDA approved the label. So that means they approved the claim. So they couldn't actually approve, then the people in California sued USDA for $20 million because there is a claim, and that is affecting more the Muslim in California where that product was going to. Mike Espy called me, and we went there in his office, and they asked about that, and I explained to him about halal issue, and that there is a claim on the label, and if that is a claim on a label, then have to be the requirement of that claim. With that, I wrote a policy about halal, and I indicate what the requirement, and was a major requirement is actually USDA does not involve on those requirement 100%, meaning they will say that must be some organization or Muslim organization approve that label, so USDA will approve it. So that shifted the requirement for halal to the Muslim organization who will watch for the product. And with that, we did approved, the policy being approved and signed and became in our policy since 1991. I'm glad that I saw the presentation and I like it. And as a matter of fact, there is some kind of improvement by saying is halal, because some of the halal organization like to have, like for instance, the poultry to be slide by hand. But in the same time, in the same talking, there is some country doesn't really care much about slaughter by hand as long as it's meet the requirement. With that, we brought Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, and Egypt to tell us how we can meet the halal requirement without having the slaughter by hand, which they told us what we're supposed to do, and which is 99% of the poultry manufacturer here in the United States is using, which is using a very low voltage when they stunning the bird. I think it between 6 to 8 with the stun, not to kill, a stun just to have it, the bird dizzy, so they can slaughter it with the head is not moving. Anyway, that Saudi Arabia approved it, and Egypt and Malaysia and most of the Muslim country approved it. And since 1991, actually, our product in the United States been increased dramatically for bringing product from United States, completely different than the product from Europe, for instance, which they stunt 60 to 70 voltage, which is stunt to kill. And as you know, that halal, when you cannot eat a bird after it died or it killed. So when we show that 6 to 7 voltage here in the United States does not kill the bird by standing after the lion and bringing some bird who really stunned, and with 2-3 minutes, the bird is running. And that's how the Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Malaysia approved it. That is basically, and I'm trying to be very brief on that halal requirement and halal certificate and what USDA is doing with halal labeling. If Melinda have anything, or Lisa, I'm open to their question too. And thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mustafa. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. And I want to also mention that Dr. Mustafa Dakdoki is an advisory board member with the American Halal Council. Thank you again for sharing the information. I'm sure many people do not know this about the halal history and background and policy. Our next speaker is Mr. Quintin Gray. He is the CEO of Q Gray and Associates, and he is a former agriculture counselor at U.S. embassies. And he's also an advisory board member with the American Halal Council and American Halal Consultants. I'd like to welcome Mr. Gray to give us his presentation.
Thank you so much, Marwan. I will start my presentation by letting you know what I do now and what I used to do. I now work with companies that are exporting their food products to the Middle East primarily. And so in that way, I'm currently engaged in the business, so to speak. But prior to that, I would say 5 to 6 years ago, I was the agricultural counselor at the US consulate in Dubai. And then many years ago, I was the agricultural trade officer in Saudi Arabia. So I've been working on the halal issue for many years. And it's a fascinating issue. But what I want to share with you today is what I experienced in the UAE when I was working in Dubai. The UAE government, first of all, when it comes to halal, I would say prior to about 6 years ago, the UAE government would send a delegation. Let's say, for example, this is all concerning exports. This is concerning foods that are imported by the UAE and that are coming from other countries, because the Middle East, as you know, they import over 90% of what's being consumed in that country, in the region, and in any country in the Middle East. So they are dealing with a lot of imported product. So what they would do in the past is they would send a delegation from the government to the country that's exporting. For example, they would send a delegation to the United States. They would go to the slaughterhouses in the United States. They're exporting halal products, and they would do an inspection. So that's the way it worked for every country that's exporting to the UAE, for example. They were, and there are a lot of countries that export to the UAE, just using the UAE as one example, and it applies to all the other countries too. And so what would happen is there were so many countries and so many slaughterhouses around the world that they needed to visit. They were getting to the United States about once every 10 years. So mind you, and once in 10 years, you're not going to be able to properly inspect to make certain that everything is being done properly. So about 6 or 7 years ago, the UAE decided this is not working. And so what we need to do is we need to have accreditation bodies within each country. So they came to the United States, they negotiated with an organization called the American H2LA. I can't remember exactly. I just use the acronym now. I can't remember exactly what it stands for, but it's a standards organization. And so you're going to be our accreditation body. So when certifiers, which were originally from religious organizations that started making, I would say, money to provide certification that a product is halal, then those organizations would be, in a sense, overseen domestically by the accreditation body. So what does that mean? That means that an impromptu visit could occur within a calendar year by that organization to make certain that all the halal standards are being adhered to. Now, the accreditation body, H2LA, for example, was the only one that was certified at the time. That body is not a Muslim body. That is a standards organization body. So their role, their thinking is, we can guarantee that standards are being adhered to, but we don't know the religious part of it. So what happened was there was a partnership, so to speak, with H2LA and then a Muslim organization to make certain that what was being done was according to the religion. And so that whole process, I was in Dubai during that time, that whole process just upended the market. At one point, we had 0 US certifiers for poultry because nobody could meet the new standards. The new standards required a restructuring of the certification bodies. And those certification bodies, in a lot of cases, weren't structured for that. They were structured for more or less, we make certain the prayers are said, et cetera, we put the stamp on and it's gone. But the new standards that were required by the UAE government said you have to do more. You have to have a management structure in place. You have to have committees formed that will make certain that the product is being certified halal properly. There are a lot of things that they required. So there was a lot of money being spent by the US certifiers to make certain that this happened. So this was a big deal. And so it's been worked out or being worked out even now, even 6 years later. There are certifiers that are having to make these requirements. Now I want to close at one point because this issue is so broad and I could talk all day, but I'm not going to talk any more than just a few minutes. But the point I wanted to make is that I use the UAE as an example of what happened when a country decides it wants to change its halal regulations. Believe me, Malaysia's changing its regulations every few years. Saudi Arabia definitely changes its regulations. All of the Muslim countries have, even though I would say in general, probably 90% of them are the same. There's a certain percentage of their regulations for imported foods governing halal products coming into the country that's different. And so every exporter has to know all the different regulations for all those countries. And so that, just to give the folks, especially the people here at FSIS, halal has a whole different meaning when it comes to what's being exported overseas. Okay, I'm gonna shut up because I could keep going, but I won't.
Are you finished? Are you sure?
Let me make one point about labeling.
Go ahead.
Okay. What happened during all of this is that in the UAE, you could go into the marketplace, and let's use poultry as an example. You could see about 300 different labels for poultry, halal. And every company or certifying body, let's say in the United States, the certifiers would have their own label. So there were a lot of labels in the market. So the UAE said, if everything is coming in that's meat product is halal, why do we need all these labels? We should have one label. So the UAE came up with its own label. But of course, you got to purchase it. You have to pay for it. There's a process for you being able to use the UAE label. So they were requiring that the organization that use it have to be inspected. They have to pay a certain amount of money to use that label. But then they said, if you are going to export your product in this country, then you have to either use our label, and if you use your label, we have to inspect you and make certain that you are conducting your business according to the, the religion and all the requirements of a law. So the certifiers we had to pay again. Then they said, if you don't want to do any of that, you can bring in a product, as long as you have the paperwork that supports it, you can bring in a product with no halal label. That's a non-starter for businesses, because businesses invest a lot of money in the halal logos and in the labels, etc. So they have invested marketing money, etc., for a certain look. And the thing they did not want to do was to give that up. So I'm using the UAE as an example. This whole issue has been spinning around for at least the last 6+ years of how to fulfill the requirements, how US exporters are to fulfill the requirements. I'm done.
Thank you, Quintin. Right. The international perspective is always important, because we do have a lot to learn and apply some of the halal standards internationally to the US market. So those are good examples. I know there is effort to create halal standards, and we're also working with the USDA and having a discussion about that. And hopefully, at one point, the USDA will work with us to finalize those standards and have them applied across the board, so we have a unified halal methodology and the standards that all the certifiers work with. I know most certifiers don't mind creating standards to regulate the market. It's just a matter of who's doing it and what Sharia or religious understanding those standards are based on. But I'm sure they could create the bare minimum that everybody can agree on and follow. So right now I'm going to open it to the Q&A. We already have few.
Can I say just take 2 more minutes before we starting the question?
Go ahead.
I just want to say something about what Quintin was saying and what you just said about the halal requirement. Like you said, we have to have some kind of umbrella, which that is something we worked on it for over, I will say, 20 years. And we still have each country, each region have their own actually requirement. We have a lot of Muslim country would have different requirement. But also thing is, we'd like to work first with USDA to make sure that all what we need are met. And then we start working with this Muslim organization or the organization, those country or those people will trust them to watch for the requirement. And give you an example, we work for years to change. USDA used to have, by law, if you have thigh meat, some turkey thigh meat, you have to call it turkey ham. So one of the Saudi Arabian came here to the United States to buy from Tyson's a lot of turkey, and I found a call from the office of the Secretary of Agriculture. There is a problem. What's a problem? He said, I bought a turkey, but they send me ham because they call it by law. I did mention that to my directors or to the Secretary of Agriculture. I told him about that. There is a few things here by law, especially when you say turkey ham. Ham means, for us, for a Muslim, is pork. So talked about a couple of years until it changed now by law is in the United States. If it's inside the United States, still called turkey ham, means turkey thigh meat, you have to call it turkey ham. But when you export it, you call it turkey thigh meat. So we didn't change it inside the United States yet because of the law. The law still saying turkey thigh meat, you have to call it turkey ham by law. That is another few things we have to clear up here in the United States so we could use it when we export the product overseas to the Muslim country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for clarifying that. Of course, the halal standards have two components. There is the international component, but there is also the US component that we need to create our own, based, of course, and in collaboration with the international halal standards. But I think it's time for the US to have its own standards. This way, everybody can go by those standards, whether they're certifiers, manufacturers, distributors, and we all work, on the same page, basically. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the first question we have. So Elizabeth is asking, how does the FSIS ensure that the actual product meets the halal label, and how does it avoid fraud and misrepresentation?
Mindy, would you like me to answer that?
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Well, this is Lisa Powell again. We rely on the supporting documentation because, as I said, we don't make the determination that it's halal. We rely on the religious authority to do so, but we require the establishment to maintain on hand a certificate or a letter, some sort of written supporting documentation that their process and their products have been reviewed and approved by the religious authority. We don't determine who the religious authority is. It could be an organization. It could be an individual who, it could be even a local imam. But we require them to have that documentation on hand to show that someone with religious authority has come in to take a look. And if it's generically labeled, we have our implant inspectors who review that documentation periodically to make sure that everything is in order, as well as what they observe implant. And if it's certified halal, we have the additional review done by our labeling staff. So that is how we assure that what is on the label is truthful and not misleading.
And that applies, from my understanding, on the manufacturing side, not on the retail, correct?
If it's FSIS product, meaning that it's produced in an official federal establishment, then that is what it would apply to. So yes, if it's made in an establishment, if you have someone outside of the federal establishment manufacturing product, that's outside of our authority. Yes.
Okay, so
I want to add something to Lisa, if I can.
Go ahead.
We have been approached several times by different countries. I said, how we can have the government certified our certification to be halal. Here, when we did ask around, we found out that agriculture marketing service, like the one that is doing the organic, making claim, they could have a program if you wanted as a country to have USDA agriculture marketing service certified that certification of halal. You have to go through that, and the country has certain requirements. As we know, different countries have different requirements to give it to that agriculture marketing service, and they will have a program, and that is for fee. You have to pay for that. They have a certain program, and as soon they have this requirement met with the establishment you are dealing with, they will give you the certificate from the government, from agricultural marketing service for fee. Thank you.
And that applies to organic, not to halal, correct?
No, it's already on organic and can be done by halal. Because I did ask, matter of fact, I found out that will increase each pound by 1 or 2 pennies if we wanted to go through the agricultural marketing service for certification.
So going back to what Lisa and Mindy said, you said any religious authority person or entity can do the halal certification. And this is where the problem lies. Who defines who's authorized religious person or entity to issue halal certification? Do you decide, or somebody on their own can claim that they're halal, their religious authority, and they can give halal certification on their own? How does it work?
Okay, well, this is Lisa, and of course, when it comes to determining factors of religion, that is outside the scope of what we do. We rely on that religious authority or entity to be representing themselves as authentic. We do not judge whether they truly are or are not.
Okay.
I'm not sure, what more you might be looking for. And I do think perhaps one of our other speakers might have something to say about this as well.
Well, that's the challenge in our community, and this is a business now. We're not talking about
It is a business.
just religion. It's a business, and when it becomes a business, there are chances of misleading information, chances for fraud, and those are, even though it might be slim, but we need to define who is authorized to certify those products. So when they come to USDA and FSIS, that person is a legit, that entity is legit. And that's where the gap is right now in the market.
Marwan, this is Mustafa. I will answer that question by saying locally in the United States, we don't have, but internationally, each country has their own organization who they trust or who they wanted for them to watch for their requirement. That's basically it.
And that's why we need an accreditation body that is the one who's accredit the certifiers. That means they meet minimum requirements. And when they go to the USDA, they know that this body or individual has been through certain trainings, has the knowledge, has the expertise, and has been approved by an accreditation body. This body is the missing link right now. And I'm not blaming USDA for it, but I'm just trying to identify that this is the missing link and gap in this process.
This is Quintin. I want to agree with what Mustafa just said. And in terms of what other countries are doing, they approve, let's say the UAE, keeping with the UAE example, they will go through a process of approving the certifiers. And that's the issue, because it's not easy. And just the thought of someone saying that I'm a religious authority and being able to certify something halal, that causes everybody pause, because you don't know who you're dealing with. And but that's overseas, it would not work, because they are definitely, they have standards for the personnel in the certification body. So they have certain standards and certain positions have to be in place, and et cetera, et cetera. So a certain number of Muslims have to be on staff. So it's very specific. And so, yeah, I just want to make that comment or add to what Mustafa said.
Thank you, Quintin. I also would like Lisa or Mindy to go back and address the difference, or clarify more the difference between something that says only halal versus something that only says halal certified. And I know the certified has to be certified. If something says only halal, what does it mean to the consumer? What kind of process has it gone through on the background, on the back end from USDA side, that it got that recognition of just halal?
Okay, when it says just halal, that's what we are referring to as a generic halal. And in order for halal to appear on the label, there has to be that supporting documentation in place that a religious authority or entity has reviewed and approved of the process of the products, so that halal can be put on the label. The consumer, of course, is not going to know who that religious organization or entity would be because it's generic halal. The consumer can be confident it's halal, but whether their interpretation of, you know, I hope you understand I have to be careful because it's not my place to dictate the religion or how it should be interpreted, but we do recognize that different religious authorities or organizations may interpret religious texts differently. And if the consumer is concerned that the application of those religious texts should be in a certain way, then they would be more interested in certified halal, where the certifying entity or organization is clearly identified, and they have an easier opportunity to do their own research and determine if their beliefs are in agreement with the beliefs of the certifying organization or entity.
Okay. So
Yep. Either way, you know, USDA, if it appears on the label, we are saying that it is truthful and not misleading. And we realize, you know, we don't live in a perfect world, but we take it very seriously. A lot of this will depend upon what is the consumer looking for, in which case that will impact what they want to see on the label.
thank you, Lisa. Thank you. I have a question here. It says, how often does halal certification have to be submitted to USDA? Does it have to be on a quarterly basis, annual basis, or just one time?
I'll take that one. The halal, once a certified halal claim is approved, it only has to be approved once, and then the rest of it, when they update it, it can be done generically, and they update the certificate yearly in their labeling record.
Okay.
Right, and then I'll add to that, while it's approved at one time, we have our implant inspectors who have their own responsibilities and tasks in plant to observe and verify. So the implant inspector would be responsible for ensuring that that documentation is updated at least once a year, because they'll be looking to see that the data on the supporting documentation is current to within the last year.
Okay. I have a question here. Why does the FSIS accept the so-called generic halal if they don't set the standards for this process?
Well, I'll take that one and say, just to give a real brief background, there's two types of label approval. There's the sketch approval and there's the generic approval. And under generic, even though we don't actually see the labels, they are approved once they are in compliance with the rules and regulations. So they still have to follow all the same rules. We just don't see the labels. And as Lisa said, we have implant inspectors that do verification activities that can verify all that information on that label is accurate when they do their general labeling test.
Okay. I have a comment here. It says, this process may allow people to manipulate the halal label without supervision or audits by the USDA or FSIS. And I also have a question that says, an individual who is a Muslim can come, it's more like a comment actually. An individual who is a Muslim can come forward and present him or herself to the FSIS as a religious authority that can grant halal certification. So anybody can do it, right?
Do you want me to take this question?
Yeah, please.
Okay. First of all, I just want to indicate something because it's very critical and very important. When you, I'm just assuming, we'll give you an example. If Saudi Arabia want to come here to buy a product, halal product, and established where they're going to buy from Tyson or from Kanagra or from whatever, this batch has certain number. So that batch with a certificate from some organization to indicate those products or that meat being slaughtered under the halal authority and through the process until they received it in Saudi Arabia. So what that meant is the certificate is with that batch, not continuation. But if the Saudi Arabia has a continuation of product from that plant, so that can be continuation. So certificate has to be with the batch they bought it as halal. So he's certified specific, that product is halal. Whether your second question, you were saying something else now?
No,
Marwan?
no, this is it.
So okay.
I have quite another question for.
You were saying something about if they can have halal, but it's not halal. So for each country, that's what I'm saying is if you're a Muslim, even in the United States, that's what I said always, and you trust certain organization, you can put this organization on the label, this being certified by that. But if some other organization, they are free to do it. Anyone can do certification of halal, but you buy which kind of halal you trust. So you buy this, like what you buy in any product. You buy the product you trust. That is how it works.
Thank you, Dr. Mustafa. Somebody's asking, to the FSIS, is the process of halal certification similar to kosher and organic, or is it different?
Say that again.
The question to FSIS, is the process of halal certification the same as kosher and organic, or is it different?
Yeah, this is Lisa, and Mindy may jump in here as well. I would say yes, it is very similar. Certainly certified halal and certified kosher are very, very similar in how we assess that. And we look for similar documentation in a number of certification programs. Of course, each program has its own requirements. And this where, Mindy, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Well, I was just going to say that the organic program that they're asking about, that's run through AMS. So they have their own very specific regulations that have certain requirements there. We do review the labels, but they have their own requirements.
So the follow-up question in terms of halal certifiers, do you have any requirement for for you to recognize somebody as halal certifier, or anybody can just say I'm a halal certifier and you just work with them?
Okay, well, we don't have a program by which we assess or certify the certifier. And we kind of give I realize we may have given the impression that anybody could claim to be a religious authority, but I think we'd have to recognize that's not really true. You know, a religious authority has to have some sort of religious background or accreditation that they receive from, you know, through their training when to reach their status. So I don't think it's right to imply that just anybody could walk in and say, hi, I'm an imam, because that's not really true. And I think
you realize that this does happen. Many people claim that they're imams when they're not.
Well, I would also have to say, and please,
just to,
you know,
but
I as USDA, some of what you're saying there is things that, you know, that's outside of what we're able to do. And gosh, you know, we're getting to religion, which is not necessarily what we want to discuss, because what we want to discuss is of course what we do to assure that the consumer that what's on the label is truthful.
No, I understand, and we're not here to put you on the spot in any way, but I'm just trying to express the consumer's thinking here. That
Marwan,
who am I trusting here? Who am I working with? Who give that authority to that person to say I'm authorized to certify a halal product? That's what the consumer always thinking and questioning. Yes, doctor.
Marwan, I just want to mention something, answering your questions, and also you answered the other question. You said, is any different between kosher and halal? For instance, and just to give you an example, and that's have nothing to do with USDA actually, is I was an inspector in the field too. So I went there, and some kosher required that the rabbi to be in the plant. And they have segregation between the product of kosher different, and you have to have completely segregation between the other product. So it depends. It depends about who's buying that product. And they say again, in the same thing with our organization. I remember Malaysia was very organized, Saudi Arabia, yeah, similar, Egypt not, and the other countries is not. So it depends about the Islamic organization or the Jewish who's gonna buy kosher or buying halal. But USDA, all what they have to do is we make sure, as USDA I'm talking about, we make sure that as the policy said or indicate that if you want to put a claim as halal, you have to have a certified claim. That's mean you have an organization who certified that product as halal. Who brings this organization? The buyer, the Muslim people. That's basically it.
I mean, what do you mean by the buyer can bring that
The
organization?
buyer mean if the countries but in United States, you don't have control. Only thing is you have to rely on organization you trust. But
Right. So
outside,
internationally,
country like Saudi Arabia have a list of who can certify their product, and goes on for all the countries.
That's correct. Internationally, there are regulations with who certifies. Those are what we call accredited certifiers, and that's the aim. At one point in the U.S., we can have an accreditation authority who gives those certifiers the power to certify or not to certify based on their knowledge, expertise, and so on. And I understand that's not the job of the USDA, but we're trying to put the USDA and FSIS in the picture of what are the missing links here, so we can have a more transparent process of what is halal standards, who issues those standards, and accredit the certifiers. So when a label is issued by USDA, we all are on the same page.
Yeah. I just want to make one comment about that, and that is good conversation, everybody. I also work as needed with a U.S. certifier, and so I get the training. I get all the training on what's going on in the Middle East, even now, even though I've left the federal government. One of the things that I found out is that when a country, let's stick with UAE, for example, when they through their approval process of a certifier, from the religious standpoint, they have a series of questions that they will ask the religious authority or the certifier that only a Muslim would know. Like I'm a Christian, so a lot of things that if you ask me certain basic things of Christianity, 99% I'm gonna know it. But that's what they do. They actually ask certain questions that a Muslim would know, because then they say, we know that person is a Muslim. That can be tricky because everybody we all practice what we preach, but they do have those questions. So that's one of the reasons, one of the things that FSIS could never do it, and no way in the world. But another organization or accreditation body that has that framework or has that knowledge and is authorized to have people on the staff who can ask the right questions, then it could be done. And that's the way they do it for approval of U.S. certifiers from a foreign country perspective.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. I have a quick, somebody made a comment that the link that you shared with us, askfsis.help.com is not working. I don't know if there is a different one or somebody just mistyped it. I'm not sure.
That came straight from our website. And they can go to the USDA FSIS website. An easy way to get to the FSIS website is to Google USDA FSIS. That will take you to our homepage. There is a search feature on the page, and you can enter Ask FSIS in the search feature, and that will take you to the Ask FSIS page. That might prove to be an easier way for them to find it.
Okay, great. Thank
Yep,
you.
I'm sorry about the link, but it came right from the page.
Right. I will post it on the comment page so people can use it if they need to.
Okay, and if you like, after this is over, we can send you some additional information to share then, so that we can be certain you have the best information to share with people.
Great. Thank you very much. We are a few minutes over our time. I wanted to thank all of you who joined us today, presented, participated, commented, and asked questions. I think this is a good start where we learned a few things about Halal Label from the source of who labels those products. And I'm sure we'll have more educational webinars to discuss Halal Label and other aspects of Halal. I want to thank you again, and you guys have a great and wonderful afternoon. Goodbye.
Well, thank you. I know I enjoyed this very much as well. You had some great speakers here today to join us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All
Appreciate
right.
it.